So hi guys, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Hetvi, and in this video, as you guys have probably guessed from the video's title, I'll be discussing how you could excel in giving an oral presentation. Now I'm aware that when we're discussing this subject matter, many of us will get a cold feet because we're nervous, we're anxious, we're scared of presenting in front of an audience, and I'm no exception from that. But over the years, there have been three key principles that I've learned that I would like to share with you guys today that have really allowed me to present with a lot of confidence and grace for any presentation that I've prepared for. So without further ado, let's get started in today's video. So the first and foremost principle is to convey to your audience the importance of your presentation. So, why is it that you're presenting the subject matter, and what information, more importantly, do you want the audience to take home with them? I would encourage you to engage in further reading to gain that holistic overview of that subject matter itself, to understand what information we already have, what research has been conducted, what the limitations are, where there is lack of knowledge that we have, how is that being addressed? Are there research or are there, studies that are being conducted in order to gain further knowledge or information about those limitations and to address those limitations? Or can you think of any ways that we can address those limitations? It's extremely crucial to get that across and convey that to your audience. The second principle that is extremely crucial is to create a question bank whilst you're preparing your presentation. So know that, when you're creating your presentation, you will not be able to convey all the information that within that presentation and incorporate it within that presentation, because you will be restricted for time. And therefore, whilst you're preparing your presentation, consider what questions the audience might want to ask you or inquisite you about. Whether you've incorporated any terminology that's difficult for them to understand. So how would you go about explaining or describing them? The utilization of any tables or charts or diagrams that you've incorporated. Are they understandable? What questions or things could they be curious of knowing, and how would you go about addressing those questions and their curiosity? Is extremely crucial that, whilst you're planning, you're considering and you're anticipating those questions that the audience might want to, ask you of. And corresponding to those questions will be what kind of answers, or how will you go about answering those questions? By formulating a kind of a plan or a structure, it'll make it a lot easier for you to then answer on the day, especially those questions that you haven't prepared for. Yes, that's right. Even after doing so much preparation, even after trying to anticipate what questions you might be asked, there's no certainty that those will be the questions that you're asked. Right? The audience on the day could have asked you a question that you haven't prepared for, that you don't have an answer for, and that's okay. Utilizing the answers that you've created from the questions that you've prepared, you could formulate an answer and back that up with evidence. And that's what it is. And that's why I emphasize on creating that question bank, is so that you can utilize information that, you've gained from those questions, those answers, and then formulate the answer to any question that you've been asked. Now, the one thing I will say is to make sure that you're not memorizing those questions or those answers that you've created, but think of the logic behind why it is that you've constructed that answer. And it's important to kind of know and form a system in your mind and kind of that logical structure in your mind as to how you'd go about answering any question that's thrown at you. However, do bear in mind that even after being so prepared, you may encounter a question that you hadn't even considered, or kind of an aspect that you hadn't touched upon with regards to the topic you've chosen. In that instance, first and foremost, don't start to panic and get nervous. Be very confident and respond by stating that you're not familiar with that aspect, or that you're not completely sure, and therefore you might require some time to do some further reading before you get back to them, or you might even direct them to some of the journal articles that you've come across to state that they are the articles that can ensure that they've gained the answers to their questions. Or, if you do have an opinion, you might want to simply state your opinion, but then also advance on and further state that, you're not completely sure if that's the correct answer. You will have to do further reading in order to strengthen your point. By addressing it in such a manner, you're not only answering the question that has been asked to you, but you're not waffling on or avoiding that question. I would highly suggest that you don't avoid any question if you don't understand, but rather opt for, one of the options I've given instead, to address that. Yes, that is a valid question asked, but you're not aware of what the answer is. And that is very likely to be true. Whilst you're presenting, you may face questions that you haven't thought of, or, areas within the topic that you hadn't considered. That's completely normal. But by stating that you're going to take steps in order to further your understanding, will show that you're willing to go a step further to gain that further understanding. So it's about how you go about answering the question when you're presenting, and that is what will show your confidence and convey kind of that gracefulness within your presentation. And the third and the most important principle is to practice before the day. I cannot emphasize enough how important it is that you practice before the day in order to build on that confidence and to make yourself more familiar with the content. Which again will kind of cut down on that nervousness, that fear, that anxiety that you have in presenting that presentation. If you're scared of presenting in front of an audience, why not present in your own room in front of your mirror and try and engage in how you would present on the day. How would you stand? How would you converse? How would you be making that eye contact? How would you engage the audience in? And then once you've gained that confidence, then you can present in front of your family or friends and ask for their constructive feedback. What did they find engaging? How did they find the presentation overall? Not just in terms of the content, but you as a presenter. How did they find your body language? Were you open? Were you speaking clearly? Were there any flaws that they thought? Were there any concepts that they didn't understand, or any questions that they had? Again, building on that question bank that I referred to before, will help you and strengthen not only your presentation skills, but your presentation overall, making it a lot more engaging. Now, one thing I wouldn't do is to factorize the pressure of time from the very beginning, because at that phase you're just familiarizing yourself with your content, the information and how you want to present it. So by incorporating time may just add to that pressure and your worry of getting the presentation done on time, which you want to avoid at the beginning, right? Once you've become familiar with the content, once you have become confident in conveying that presentation, only then would I factorize time. And of course, the closer you get to your presentation date, I would factorize in time. Just try and stick as close as you can to the time that you've been allocated. Now, it can be that you're slightly above time, during your mock preparations, and that's completely all right, because do remember, on the day you're likely to be very nervous and anxious, so you'll be speaking a lot faster than you are normally. So you'll be able to kind of factorize that, and most likely be able to present within the time that you've been allocated. But however, on the day, if you do find yourself to be very slow, or that you're slower than normal, you're fumbling a lot more, and you feel like you won't be able to convey your entire presentation on time, consider eliminating some of your points that you've presented, right? If the audience is curious, they will inquire you about them. And of course, because you familiarize yourself with all the points, you'll be able to appropriately address their questions. So, don't feel like just because you've prepared it a certain way, you'll have to say it a certain way. Learn to kind of adapt whilst you're giving that presentation, and be open to that change. So if you're able to incorporate these 3 principles, there's no doubt you'll be able to give an excellent presentation. So that is it for this video, guys. If you found this video useful, please do make sure to like this video, consider subscribing and hitting that bell icon right next to it to make sure that you're regularly updated. That is it for this video. If you do have any questions or queries, don't forget to comment down below, and I'll try my best to address any of your questions and queries. Thank you so much again for watching my video. Until next time, guys. Take care. Bye!